All right, today we are going to be designing a chassis for our robot using our VEX V5 Parts Library. So what I want you to do is make sure that you're in Tinkercad and head over to your classes and open up your class period and open up our design a chassis activity. And once you're in, you're going to open up a create new design and a 3D design. Now we're in our space and we need to rename our Tinker. So we're gonna rename this our last name underscore first initial underscore, and we are gonna be building a chassis. So we're gonna title it what it is, and then underscore, and then put today's date, which is 9/19. Okay. Now we've titled our Tinkercad, and now we need to get it set up to build a robot. So as you can see, we have this work plane right here. If we click on settings here in the bottom right, we can change how large our Tinker is. So this one is only 200 by 200 millimeters. We want to change that to 1000 so we have enough room to build our chassis. So we're going to make this 1000 by 1000. And then we can go ahead and exit out of that. And now we have our large workspace to start working in. We're going to go ahead and start to import some robotics parts. So if we head over to basic shapes and your creations, we should have a catalog of all of our VEX V5 robotics parts in the library. Now we're going to be designing a chassis, and you get to design whatever chassis you want to design. But we're going to keep in mind some of the things from our Explore today, which are common chassis shapes. So you might design a square rectangular base, you might design an H-shaped chassis, a U-shaped chassis, a holonomic shaped chassis, okay, with the wheels pointed inward or outward. So you have some designs of how you might want to do this. I am going to come up with something that's kind of similar to an H shape, and I'm going to bring some parts into that and show you how I might quickly create a chassis design. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to bring in some C channel. So I'm going to search my creations for that, and I'm going to bring in a C channel that is 25 holes long like this. Okay, so I've brought in my C channel, and I'm going to rotate this one 90 degrees. So I'm looking directly at it, and I'm going to make a copy of this and slide it over. And I'm going to move this to 5 millimeters. That way I can use the arrow keys to move my chassis or my C channel pieces over a little bit. And I want to make sure that they're completely lined up. So I'm going to use the align tool and make sure that they are aligned. Okay, so now that I have my C channel on either side, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add in some angle channel. So I'm going to make this one go about 15 across, and this is going to form how I connect my pieces together. So I'm going to place this first one right about there, and if I zoom in, I can kind of see that it's too low. It goes in the middle of my piece, so I'm going to adjust it by bringing it up a little bit. And I want to just double check the dimensions, make sure everything's exactly where I want it. This one needs to go over a little bit. So let me get a better view. I'm just going to adjust that one so it's right on the edge. And now I've kind of formed the basis of my H. And then I'm going to make a copy of this angle. And I'm going to move it forward to kind of tune and kind of have a more supported H chassis. That's what I'm designing. So mine is kind of the shape of an H, but it has two supports instead of one support in the middle. This is good to go. And I'm going to start to place my wheels where I want to put them. So I'm going to bring in some wheels. I got my 4-inch wheel. I'm going to bring it into the space. And I'm going to rotate it so it sits upright. And I need to move that 90 degrees like that. And I'm going to place this first one I'm going to estimate about where I want it to go. So that looks good right there. And I might just inch it over a little bit closer to my chassis. Now I'm going to copy and paste this and bring it to the other side. Okay, so now I got my two wheels on my chassis. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to select both of these wheels and make a copy of it and bring those to the front. So this will become my front wheels. Now I have the basics of my chassis ready to go. I'm going to group this again. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to adjust this so it is sitting flat on the space. So I'm going to bring it up until the wheels are touching the surface. And now I have my chassis fully connected and aligned, and it's got my four wheels where I want them to go. Okay, now to finish off a chassis, we're going to need to bring in a few more components. We will need some motors to power our wheels. We're going to bring one motor for each wheel. So I'm going to bring a motor in to the space for each wheel. And I'm going to adjust it so that the motor is facing the right direction for each wheel. So I'm going to have this first one go on my front wheel right here. And I'm just going to get this one lined up first before I work on the second one. So I'm going to look from above, and I need to get this motor lined up directly with my wheel. That looks pretty good right there. And now I'm going to make a copy of this one and send it to the back. Now you can see I got a little bit of a problem here. The two motors are too close together. There's not enough room to fit those two motors right there. Okay, so what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to slide over a little bit of the chassis. So I'm going to have to ungroup my chassis to make it a little bit longer. So I'm going to ungroup those. I'm going to ungroup again. And now I'm just going to select the things that I want to slide over. So the first thing I want to slide over are my two angle pieces. I'm going to slide those over to the end of this chassis. So you can see that they are going to be tied in with just the one hole. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the whole right side of my chassis, and I'm going to move them all at once. I'm going to move everything over right there, about there. And now I have enough space for my two motors. They have plenty of room to fit wires in there, and I got my four wheels looking good. Okay, now we need a place to put things like our battery and our brain. Alright, now we're just going to continue to adjust all the parts fitting our battery, our brain, onto the chassis, and making sure that everything fits well together and that nothing is overlapping and that nothing is interfering with different parts of the chassis. And make sure that all my clearance is good. And there you have it. There is a fully constructed chassis now. Now, notice I did not include all the components of like how to attach the wheels to the motor and where the screws are going to go. This is just a very basic build to kind of brainstorm how we might start designing a chassis. All right, just a reminder, make sure that you guys are staying out of the lab space in the back of the classroom. Also, make sure you're staying on task. During the practice time, you're going to design your own chassis on Tinkercad, so make sure that you do so. If you're missing components from the VEX V5 library, parts library, make sure that you go back to that assignment and continue to import those parts so that way you can start designing your own chassis. Make sure that the classroom is cleaned up at the end of the period, and I'll see you guys tomorrow.